Hi, I'm Starsla, your own friendly Piero. Just kidding, Starsla, your own friendly drag queen. And now, I want to explain today that drag and horror have always had this sort of crossroads, you know what I mean? So, we can see throughout a long history of horror drag and horror that involves drag queens and cross-dressers and everything. It has had a long history, and horror and drag are both used to modify reality and send us some kind of message, whether political, whether culturally significant, whether just goddamn horrific, okay? No matter what it is, this has always been a sort of outlet or escape for many people for many, many years. And so today I just want to say some of my personal opinion and history on what contributed to this eventual subculture of horror drag merging together to make what we know today. So plug the electric into your chairs, because I'm going to be doing all that in just a minute. Drag has always been somewhat socially acceptable to the mainstream audiences as long as it is something to entertain them, whether done to make them laugh, or whether it's because women couldn't be performing on stage in Shakespeare times due to stuff like misogyny. From Shakespeare to the army entertaining each other, just to pre-code. Pre-code is referring to movies that were released before the 1930s. Now, during this time, you could have queerness, you could have cross-dressing. This was around the time that they introduced speakies, or movies with audio for the first time. And so, around this same time, movies became more and more adventurous. And so, pre-code refers to before the Hays Code. A lot of these movies were very free to discuss whatever topics they wanted. We had multiple films with homosexual kisses, we had many films with queer references, such as Blondie and the Foleys, This Is Africa, Hook, Line and Sinker, and many, many more. But then, as film started to progress with talkies and with film becoming very, very popular, of course the church has to have an issue with it. So, the Catholic Church had a massive issues with movies, especially showing all of this sinful content to all of its followers, so they had to get involved, obviously. And so, the Hays Code basically meant that movies could not have anything which the Catholic Church deemed wrong. Right. Which made for pretty boring movies. But you can even see, because this was so widely accepted in the West, that the Catholic Church really did have a massive impact at this time. And I think that definitely plugs into another thing of horror drag, which is definitely blasphemy, because a lot of people have personal connections with faith because of what a massive stronghold that it did have on people. So now, for the rest of the world, this meant close to nothing. But for us in the West and many other countries that follow America after it makes its decisions, for some reason, this meant that we could no longer have anything provocative, anything that disrespected the Catholic Church, any homosexual activities, any sexual deviance, no full frontal nudity, anything like that. And now, this mainly applied to the bigger theatres, but a lot of people would take this in stride too. A lot of people did not like this. They didn't listen. So eventually, it came to the Catholic Church basically saying, hey, we can either make this a legal issue and you will have to follow us, or they came to an agreement that the film studios could continue to make whatever movies that they wanted as long as the Catholic Church looked over the script and approved it, which men had to be men, women had to be women. Now, there were exceptions. There were certain exceptions. Now, the Hays Code said you could have homosexual deviancy or cross-dressing or anything that was satanic, but it had to be punished by the end of the movie. This subconsciously set in early minds that people who cross-dress, people who are outside of the gender binary, were automatically something that should be punished. It is something that should not be accepted within a society. It is what it was subconsciously telling us, you know, or the Catholic Church was embedding in the movies. Take that for a conspiracy theory.
It's a game theory.
The Hays Code gave way to something we now refer to as the Golden Age of Hollywood. And the Golden Age of Hollywood gave a lot of horror queens a lot of inspiration. Why? Because the Golden Age of Hollywood gave us B-movies. Now, B-movies were originally used for not low-budget movies, but a lesser-known movie that was part of a double feature when you went to see it in the cinemas. Think of a record and like a B-side or a B-side baby by Adam and... and how the B-side is the less known song in the releasing. That's pretty much what it was, but for movies. And so when this golden age kind of lifted, B-movie started to refer to something that was very low budget, or low budget horror movies, which is now kind of what we use the term B-movie for. Kind of just a terrible horror movie, but it inspires a lot of people. Today we use B-movie mainly to talk about horror movies. The main attraction of them is that they were cheap to make, and they would still get an audience no matter what, because B-movies could talk about stuff that big pictures could not, because B-movies oftentimes were self-regulated, meaning that they didn't have to go through the Catholic Church, and B-movies in the early stages would then lead the way into the 70s and the 80s for midnight movies. Midnight movies were movies that would be shown at independent theatres really late at night, and they would always be bottom-of-the-barrel releases. There would be B-movies, there would be campy movies, you know, and this led way to movies like Rocky Horror Show, Frankenhooker, and all of the campiness we love of the 80s being able to be shown to a massive audience. And this in turn would inspire loads of people like John Waters, who else is horrifying? J.K. Rowling. Stop it, J.K., stop it. Ow, ow, ow. A massive influence that goes unrecognised is a director called Ed Wood. Ed Wood would go on to make some of the most well-known B pictures of the 50s and the 60s, and he worked with many icons like Vampira and Bela Lugosi, and he was actually the first open cross-dressing director on, you know, directing anything. I guess you could count Charlie Chaplin too, because he would often do it, but Ed Wood was for the love of the game. He allegedly wore underwear under his army uniform, which... Diva down! His first movie, though, was a rip-off or inspiration of Christine Jorgensen's story. She was a transgendered woman in the 50s, and it is a movie called Glenn or Glenda with Bela Lugosi, and it talks about the difference between transsexuals and... I don't know what it's called when you, like get off on cross-dressing. Whatever it's called. But it basically just talks about transsexualism. And it's a 50s movie, and so a lot of his movies were known... He was known as basically the B-movie director, the B-picture maker. But Ed Wood would make these films on very, very small budgets, and he would inspire many punk film directors and inspire a whole new generation. He was a really, really cool guy, okay? He was awesome. Awesome. I'll put up some of my favourite Ed Wood movies, because I love Ed Wood. A quick side interpretation that I want to throw in there is Disney villains, and you gotta lock in with me on this one, guys, okay? Just imagine you are a kid living in this time where you cannot see gay people, you cannot go out to midnight movies because you may be too young. Just think how cunty Disney villains are. I feel like they follow Hays Code to a T, okay? You have overconfident women who are domineering and making men submissive. You have men dressed flamboyantly. You have, you know, these cross-dressing sissies everywhere, and they're ruining the good people's lives. Can you imagine how cunty that would be? Like, who did not have a crush on Gaston? Or Hook? Hook was fine, okay? There's so many Disney guys that so gorgeous, okay? They're so evil, they wear hair that looks like wigs, they perform and kill people in outfits. What is more draggy than that? Like, hello? What is more horror drug than that? Killing a bitch in like 10-inch heels? Are you kidding me? Like, what is more draggy than Ursula stealing people's voices and giving them contracts? That's like RuPaul, but like prettier. And plus, Ursula was inspired by the next thing I want to talk about, which is John Waters. John Waters is someone who has said that he took inspiration from Disney villains, and Ursula was actually based off of Divine. It's a very well-known fact that people love to repeat. John Waters would meet Glenn through a mutual friend at a party, where John Waters would give Glenn the name Divine. Divine started drag a little bit earlier. Divine would throw house parties where she would dress as Elizabeth Taylor, which... Girls gotta live. Girls gotta live, okay? Soon Divine and John Waters would create this very filthy drag aesthetic for John's movies, because he had gotten a camera from his grandmother a few years earlier in the 60s for Christmas or his birthday or something. His grandma just gave him a camera. That's the point of the story, okay? if you have a grandma, make sure to rob a camera off them. You could become John Waters. So they made Divine's aesthetic together, and Divine would definitely serve to be a really early look into punk drag, because there was drag around the time, of course, and it was very shocking, especially in the 60s, but drag was still very nitpicky on what was and was not drag, which I guess it still is today. Just depends on who you ask. Most of the people will not do drag. Another 2 points that I just want to drop in here that maybe I have mentioned just once or twice before in this video. One of them is that the 70s gave way to a massive explosion in subculture. We saw hippies, we saw punks, we saw the start of goth or post-punk. We saw a lot of these subcultures rise from the 70s, and the 70s especially was a massive time for, like I said, midnight cinema, where you would see a lot more movies that were talking about sexual liberation, sexual freedom, everything like that. I mean, just watch Rocky Horror Show, and remember it was released in 1975. That movie has incest, homosexuality, cross-dressing, arson, murder, Nazis, everything you could want in a movie, right? And it was not really censored because it was a midnight movie, Jesus Christ. And, I mean, just the culture of going to these very campy movies, dressed all the way up to the nines because of counterculture and because of the cinemas that were able to let this happen. This was obviously a massive influence on a lot of people. Rocky Horror Show, especially just as a movie in general, was just such an inspiration for many people. That ooky spooky vibe with that kind of cross-dressery vibe-ish, I guess. Just in general, these campy movies, midnight movies, everything like that, and subculture gave way to thousands of people to be able to express themselves under the darkness. And with more people dressing up and more people enjoying stuff like the Rocky Horror Show movie, this gave way to the 80s and the number of camp movies that we see. The number of comedy movies mixed with horror movies combined to make these very campy, very draggy movies. This was a big inspiration, obviously. And with campy movies being made, you then had draggy musicals being made outside of that, because drag would become more widely accepted with the rest of this rise of subculture. To go back a few years, we have to talk about the Coquettes. I say Coquettes, but that feels really weird because it feels like I'm calling them cucks. Coquettes. We have to talk about the Coquettes. They were a psychedelic hippie theater group in the 70s, and they would parody musicals, they would do show tunes before moving on to original material and comedy stuff. I think they were always comedic, I don't know, I wasn't there. Slowly, they would gain an underground cult following that led to mainstream exposure. Mainstream exposure of a band that is mainly queers and queens was incredible for the time. Of course, extremely outraging, but incredible. Later, the Coquettes would inspire a few club kids. Money soon became an issue, and now the Coquettes would mainly perform for free. But after performing at the same theatre, they wanted payment. After wanting payment, Sebastian, one of the members, eventually formed a band called Angels of Light. Those who did not join the Angels of Light were then set to perform in New York. Now, the Coquettes were very well known for partying. They would party all over San Francisco, and because of this, they were very untrained in in putting together an actual structured performance. And so this performance still was the biggest thing to come out of New York, okay? Anyone was going to be there. Andy Warhol was going to be there, Yoko Ono was going to be there, who would both go on to inspire their own separate subcultures of horror performers to grow up and inspire by the rest of this. But their New York show was a disaster, okay? Absolute disaster. Everyone in New York absolutely hated them, and they actually left halfway through, which is insane. Why is this relevant, I hear you asking? Because they are a mainstream band that were able to tour from San Francisco to New York and break the image of what drag should look like. They were a heavily influential band on not only just alternative drag, but just like horror drag in general, and they always ventured out into the otherworldly. They had more success throwing parties, obviously, which is where a lot of horror queens come from, organizing and hosting Halloween events. They did macabre parties, and they were inspirational for filmmakers to come. They were always anti-establishment, and they always had their politics set out for them right, okay? Might as well call them on their punk shit. Next, I want to discuss some more drag performers. So, in Australia, right after the Coquettes in San Francisco, you had the group of space alien drag queens called Doris Fish, Tippy, Miss X, and you also had other performers like Philip Ford, these absolutely incredible drag queens who were known for throwing these massive horror parties, these out-of-space parties, and Doris herself would go on to form her own band with Tippy and Miss X called the Sluts A Go-Go. They were very inspired by B-horror and the Coquettes, and so their most adventurous project would be the filming of Vegas in Space. Vegas in Space is one of my favorite movies ever. I love it so much. It is the first movie with an all drag queen cast, and it is about these men who go into the glamatron fucking sector of the universe, and they have to turn into women to try and help this planet. Okay, I'm not describing it the best, but whatever. This movie is extremely campy and gained a cult following after it was shown. It would be later bought by Troma, which is arguably another massive impact on punk and cult and horror kind of drag, because Troma are known for very low budget films. They are known for, you know, the films which have the crazy ideas. So they'd be later bought out by Troma, and the film would take like 8 years to film, which is absolutely insane. It would later be featured on USA Up All Night, which was known for showing horror, cult movies, and B-pictures, and this inspired a whole sector of drag queens. This movie was so revolutionary, and yeah, it is amazing and extremely underrated. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s. In 1962, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane would be released, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was an immediate hit. Everyone loved it, and this movie would continue to be a gay favorite for years to come, especially for one male actress called Charles Pierce, and Charles Pierce was absolutely incredible. This was a drag queen who made her own movies, acted in her own movies, was all around just incredible, and she was most known for, or he was most known for his impersonations of female celebrities, including Betty Davis in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and this would go on to inspire many people to do, well, Snatch Game, for instance, you know, celebrity impersonation, female impersonation. I don't know what woman looks like me, but I'd be glad to meet her. Charles Pierce putting on that Betty Davis wig led to, you know, season 4 Snatch Game. Look at that whenever you're watching Psycho Beach Party. Charles Pierce basically paved the way, though, for not only celebrity impersonation, but alternative celebrity impersonation, which, you know, always important to get the horrifying-looking ones. Another aspect which I will run into the ground when talking about is obviously B-movies and horror hosts. I think we have a massive thank you to say to all of our horror hosts, Elvira, Vampira, every single man and woman that has been, you know, dedicated to this. I guess you could even say, like, Tina Arena from Raw Time in modern day. But these women would show B-picture movies in wigs, corsets, nails, £100 of makeup. I mean, no offense. They look gorgeous. No offense. Like, these girls were basically drag queens, like, more in drag than me. Like, I do not blame Cassandra Peterson for not wanting to do her character anymore, because Elvira, oh my god, I could not imagine wearing that much every single day. You get what I'm saying? And yeah, they're like draggy icons. Come on now, running the late night channel, showing B-picture in full drag. That is what drag queens thrive off of. Thrive! If you think about it, Sigourney is kind of our, like, generation's Elvira. Take that for a spin. I'm not going to say my opinions on Sigourney, just in case my address gets leaked. But I think she's a good performer, and I think that, you know, she's a diva. I always see her on her, like, podcast with, you know, her, like, corsets and everything, and her big hair. She looks so good. She looks so good. Like, I'm jealous. I'm so jealous. Do you remember the Coquettes that I talked about just a few minutes ago? Well, Andy Warhol being at the Coquettes opening was, you know, no gave a little inspiration, should we say. Andy Warhol, who was always taking inspirations from things, he was taking inspirations everywhere. This inspired him to make his own troupe called his Superstars, which were the base for the club kids. Superstars would be people who Andy Warhol believed deserved their 15 minutes, because he believed everyone deserved their 15 minutes. And a lot of these people would turn out to be club kids, you know, like James St. James, the original club kid, okay? I'm not comfortable saying gay language. I feel like I'm appropriating, even though, you know, I look like this. Anyways, club kids and popular drag queens often got grouped together, with RuPaul being called part of the club kids, and while it was somewhat true she'd be going out to clubs, these people didn't really interact with their circles that much. But club kids did inspire a whole generation of punk drag. We even use the same vocabulary, those massive chunky shoes which often get called club kid shoes. You also have Trip NYC that you can thank to the club kids. They took inspiration from all subcultures, from fetish wear to alternative generalness, from just sticking shit to yourself or stapling shit to yourself. It did not matter. These people were heavily counterculture, drank all night, party all day, and heavily planted the seeds for self-branding, influencers, and just having your life documented as a whole. Obviously, a major standout when we talk about this is Lee Bowery. Lee Bowery, he was called a lot of different things by the media, and while I didn't really like to use labels per se, Lee Bowery was an artist more than anything, and he was just an incredible person who pushed towards, you know, just freedom in general, and he's a very widely recognized symbol within artists and within punk drag especially, I guess. And a quick point that I would like to mention is that you can see with all of these troupes, which are made out between everyone, you have Ed Wood's kooky group of crossdressers, you have Andy Warhol's Superstars, you have John Waters' Dreamlanders, you have the Coquettes. Throughout all of these troupes, this really cements an early view into what we would call chosen families as drag queens, and I think it's very much the start of that too, and you can see it just in the way that people are outlawed, you know, like the outlaw parties. You can see that people really try and look for solace and look for family everywhere they can, and subcultures and counterculture really gave way for a lot of that for younger people. This next point is maybe going to seem a little bit silly, but I don't really care. The 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s as a whole slowly introduced the media to fetish magazines and fetish content, especially being able to mail it to your house, where it probably did exist in the 30s and 40s. I cannot imagine that was easy to find at all. But with mail-in services now being frequently used, where you would send money out to get magazines back, a lot of this was very quickly integrated into underground society. And into the 80s and 90s especially, many alternative subcultures like punk or goth heavily took from fetish subcultures, with a lot of latex being used, with a lot of bondage being used, and it would be used as shock value, which shock value in general is a major part of horror drag, I feel like. A lot of people will use shock value to their advantage, and so latex and bondage being used especially in regular day wear was very influential, and I would like to think that this is also very influential on Visual Kai, but, you know, I'm not going to go into that now. The 90s too, when we think about all of these mail-in comics and how media was allowed to be shared way more openly with way more graphic violence and way more depictions without the Catholic Church being able to say anything about it, showed us to very violent and graphic comics and very horrific comics, which definitely led the way for a lot of people, because many people are inspired by manga or comics, or the first thing that they read as children. And, you know, as children, we usually don't want to sit down with a 900-page essay about Frankenstein, you know, much rather read it in comic form. And so the 90s really gave way more accessibility towards that. We really cannot go any further without talking about a drag queen that is still active and still doing absolutely amazing work, who I think is the epitome of horror and comedy combined. That is one Peaches Christ. Peaches Christ, or our Lord and Savior Peaches Christ, would host many different parties and activities. Her most prolific one being Midnight Mass, which would be a pretty much just, like, think of a horror host hosting a movie, but in real life. She would do that, and she would like to give all of the movies what you call Rocky Horror Show treatment, which I think is so cool. She had her own feature-length film, and she's always just included in little references and little justs, and she even created her own horror experience near her house. Everything that she does is absolutely incredible, and she is a massive contributor towards horror drag in general. She is so inspiring. She has cosplayed from multiple different series, and she's just been there since the start. And some other queens include Sherry Vine and Jackie Beat. These people have all contributed to these punk and drag movies that we all know and love, and the culture that drag has been built on for so long, and they need more attention than they do, okay? Majorly underrated, and I feel like drag fans, you know, lose sight of the older queens. They say older queens. Oh my god, this annoys me so badly. I'm so sorry. On Drag Race, I haven't seen that show in about 3 years. I'll see people commenting like, we need older drag queens. They'll get someone who's 28, and someone will be like, finally an older drag queen.
28?
28! Oh my god, holy unk, what the fuck? 28! Oh! I guess Twink Death comes sooner to drag queens, because I don't know what's going on, okay, babes? I'm gonna be like, I don't know, I'm gonna be like 27, and they're gonna like drag my corpse onto Drag Race, and they're gonna be like, old queen, old diva. Huh? If I feel like my life is over at 27, it might as well be, okay? Don't piss me off. And now the part of the video that everyone probably clicked on this video for, the Boulay Brothers. I love the Boulay Brothers so much. I love their music, I love the show, I love everything about it, you know? So the Boulay Brothers, they've made multiple references to them being inspired by Club Kids. They possibly were, who knows? The Rocky Horror Show, comic books, B-movies, everything like that, all the goodness. And in 2016, they would make their own show called Dragula. Oh my gosh, hashtag love Dragula, hashtag live, laugh, love. And Dragula was the culmination of years of alternative meets punk and meets horror, all combined into one, when the aesthetics of the show really took off and were really resonating with people. This show, for the past, 10 years now, I guess. Oh my gosh, 10 years. That is insane. It's 10 years this year. For 10 years, it has been a light of horror, comedy, drag, campiness, throughout everything. I wish they had more drag kings, though. That's the only thing, I do wish I'm so happy for the drag kings we have. Jarvis Hammer, Throb Zombie, love them to pieces. We need more, okay? Get these motherfuckers on the show now! And although Dragula's had its controversy, Dragula invites members of all genders, all races, all ages to come compete, and it is truly just an absolutely amazing show, you know, for horror fans, for drag fans alike. And with an increase in drag media, it leaves way for, you know, even more in the future. I rewatched Slay last night because I watched it when it first came out, didn't remember anything about it, still don't remember anything about it, but it was a decent movie. Was I a little high through it? Maybe. That's a different conversation. But yeah, it leaves room for more drag content in the future, and that is amazing. And I guess, unfortunately, in modern media, a massive inspiration, which I don't really want to talk about, really was Sharon Needles. If we're thinking about Drag Race, Sharon Needles very much opened the door for alternative and spooky drag. You know, and over the past few years, we've seen an increase in women on the show, bar one. But that one woman won. That one woman won. And we have had, one trans guy, but, come on, you can do better. Come on. Come on. That being said, everyone go watch King of Drag, okay? Everyone go watch King of Drag. We need a second season right now. Yeah, but I hope you enjoyed that little video of me yapping about random things. If you didn't, I don't really care. Yeah. If I missed anything, if you think that there is anything that inspired horror drag or inspired you maybe as a person, feel free to drop it below. Personally, I'm inspired by, looking a mess all the time. I really just thought that's the best thing I could do with my life, and I enjoy it, I think. Possibly. But yeah, I'm Starsla, your unfriendly drag queen, and this is me telling you to do more with your life. This is Starsla, your unfriendly drag queen, saying, bam, 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 good night. Meow. Smell like my bracelets. Gonna just go down and check out the show. Bow, bow, bow. Give me more dancing and singing and moving to the boogie. And just when it hit me, somebody turned around and shouted, play that funky music, white boy. Play that funky music right.